This is a Fox News alert on a day of major political news, which we'll get to shortly. Hurricane Matthew has brought a dangerous storm surge expected to hit 9 feet in parts of Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. And right now, more than 1 million people are without power in Florida as the damaging hurricane works its way north. Let's get right to Fox News Chief Meteorologist Rick Reitman. Rick?
Yeah, we've dealt with in Florida. We're almost done in Florida. Starting to see offshore winds here around the Jacksonville area. That'll push some of that storm surge away. But the storm surge increasing across the coastal Georgia area and then in towards North Carolina. And we're still, last couple images, seeing an eye pop up there at the center of the storm. Winds at 110 miles an hour. It's the top end of a Category 2. It has weakened some. We knew that would happen. But the pressure's still really low. And so it's a very, very strong storm. A lot of water, a lot of wind, and we have a lot of rain yet to be had. Hurricane warnings in effect just from the north of Daytona Beach up across areas of just to the north of Wilmington, North Carolina. This entire area with the hurricane winds yet to come. And the storm surge is going to be big. Worst of it likely from areas just to the south of Savannah up to around Charleston. All of those nooks and crannies and little waterways here are going to be seeing a lot of storm surge flooding. We're also going to be watching the threat for a lot of rain coming in. The rain is going to be worse as we move to the north. It's going to start to mix a little bit with a front, and that is going to wring out a lot of moisture. So I think areas of South Carolina through North Carolina, even up towards Virginia Beach, is going to be looking at the worst of the rain, Britt, and take a look at some of these totals. We're going to see widespread 5 to 10 and some isolated spots there that see up to 15 inches of rain. So get ready for a major flooding event this weekend across the coastal areas of the Carolinas. Britt.
Rick, thanks very much. We'll continue to track Matthew throughout the hour, but turn now to political news. The national polling average continues to show Hillary Clinton with a lead just under 5 points in a two-way and just over a 3-point lead in a four-way race. And there's an interesting new poll out from Fox News tonight. Also, our nightly betting odds continue to show Clinton about a 3-to-1 favorite, as you can see there. And we'll get to the polls in a moment. But first, the story the political world has been buzzing about all afternoon. A just-released tape from 11 years ago on which Donald Trump can be heard making some extremely crude comments about himself and women. Our chief political correspondent, Carl Cameron, reports from Trump Tower. Carl?
Hi there, Britt. This is a recording of Donald Trump speaking with Billy Bush, then of Access Hollywood, on a bus as they were headed to another program that Trump was going to be on. It is graphic, it is raunchy, and it has been bleeped for a family audience, but here's just a sampling of it.
She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where they have some nice furniture. I took out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there, and she was married. And all of a sudden, I see her. She's now got the big phony and everything. She's totally changed her look.
She's your girl's hottest in the purple.
Whoa!
Yes!
Whoa!
Yes, the Donald has scored!
Whoa!
Oh, my man! Wait, you gotta look at me when you get out. You're like,
this up.
That is very...
You give me the thumb
Look at you. You are a... You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
whatever you want.
Grab them by the... You can do anything.
Look at those legs. All I can see is the legs.
No, it looks good.
Come on, shorty.
Ooh, nice legs, huh?
Oof, get out of the way, honey. That's good legs. Go ahead.
It's always good if you don't fall out of the bus. Like Ford, Gerald Ford, remember?
Down below. Pull the hand.
Hello, how are you? Hi.
Trump, how
nice
are
seeing you. Terrific.
Pleasure to meet you.
Terrific. You know Billy Bush?
How are you?
Nice to see you. How you doing, Ariane?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Are you ready to be a soap star?
We're ready. Let's go. Make me a soap star.
Very shortly after the tape went public, Mr. Trump himself issued a statement in which he says this was locker room banter, a private conversation that took place many years ago. Bill Clinton has said far worse to me on the golf course, not even close. I apologize if anyone was offended. Trump insiders say this is the first time during the campaign they can remember him actually apologizing. And the Clinton campaign has weighed in, only with a tweet at this point. They just wrote, "This is horrific. We cannot allow this man to become president." We are 2 days away from the second debate of the presidential candidates. It'll be on Sunday in St. Louis. Pretty fair bet this will be one of the issues. Brett?
Carl, thanks very much. So is this story a one-day wonder, or will it have a lasting effect? Some thoughts from our nightly political panel. Byron York, chief political correspondent of the Washington Examiner, and Heidi Presbella, senior political reporter for USA Today. Byron, your thoughts?
Well, it's more than a one-day wonder. That's certainly true. We're going to see it for a while. I think the thing you have to try to scope out, and just the immediate shock of all this, is what effect it will have on the voters. And I think with Donald Trump's voters, you have to remember they're with him now after everything that has happened and all that he has said. So I really don't think that it's going to have a huge effect on his base support. Exactly. Right. Obviously, we know where the Democrats would be on this. There is that small group of independent voters, and I think we just really don't know exactly how they're going to react. On the one hand, you may say, well, the American people are good and decent, and they would be offended by someone saying stuff like this. On the other hand, you can say we have a popular culture that's been so profoundly vulgarized in television and other things that maybe they won't be affected that much by it. I don't know, but I think that the effect on those voters who still might have been willing to choose Trump is the story of this.
Heidi, your thoughts?
Well, my immediate reaction was this is going to just lock in that gender gap at a minimum. But the problem, they said, well, his explanation was this was a private discussion. Well, I think that's exactly the problem, is that it was a private discussion, which means that it provides a window into how he really is in private and who he is in private. And that, up until now, he said these comments objectifying women have really just been for entertainment and public consumption purposes, but this wasn't meant for public consumption. But the most incriminating part of it really was just the comments about how he can essentially force himself on women, and he can do that because he's rich and famous. And to your point, yes, we've had this discussion before, that he himself has said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and his voters would still be with him.
We're talking about 40% of the electorate that seems locked into him.
Right, but we are talking about those suburban Philadelphia soccer moms, and with them, I don't think they're very happy with him tonight, and I think they probably want something more than the apology that he just issued.
And there's kind of a reflex with Republicans. Anytime there's any sort of sexual impropriety mentioned, they go, Bill Clinton. He did it. It was worse with Bill Clinton. And that's immediately what Trump did in his statement. You see it across the Twitterverse tonight. And I just don't think that's actually going to work, although Hillary Clinton seemed to kind of open that a little bit when she said something to the effect, this man cannot be allowed to be president. But I think, again, you're going to see whether Trump really plays that Bill Clinton card and whether it works with anybody this time.
What about the fact that Donald Trump in 2005, although he was not like the celebrity he is now, was a pretty well-known figure, which explains why he was going to be on Access Hollywood, which was the show that he was joining Billy Bush on. But the question is, why would you ever do that with a microphone attached to you, whether the camera was outside the bus or not?
I was thinking about that. He was always going to be an entertainer.
I was thinking about that on the way down. I mean, because anytime you put on a microphone, you know that somebody can hear it, somebody can record it. It could be the billionaire effect, in which there's a man who's used to being the boss, used to getting his way, used to being able to say all sorts of things in front of people, and it never coming out. And indeed, it never did come out until we get in the total white-hot atmosphere the last month of a presidential campaign.
Yeah, it's been 11 years.
That's right.
Is there any reason to say, look, that was 11 years ago, he's a different guy now, he's settled into his marriage, he was 8 months into his current marriage when this happened. Would it be fair to say, or to argue that, look, he's grown up some?
Well, I think his supporters will definitely see it that way. But to women who are looking at the fact that since then he's also made other questionable comments about women, about minorities, the polling does show that women do view him as being, having an issue there. So if he did, I would say, if he didn't have a pre-existing condition in that sense, yes, possibly. But again, I just don't think that that's going to be a compelling case to the suburban Philadelphia swing moms. And I just think he's going to have to answer for this in the debate, and it will be interesting to see if he just issues a very wholehearted apology, or if he does kind of go the route of saying, hey, Bill, you're in this with me, and they pull out the oppo, and things just descend and get really ugly in this debate. And I think the only place where that could be work is if they have something that we don't already know about in terms of Hillary's role and going after the women.
Bill, not the candidate.
Yeah.
It's Bill, not the candidate. And the grown-up part really doesn't work very well, because he was almost 60 years old when he said this. He's 70 today, almost 60
they
at the
say,
time.
you live and learn. You never stop growing.
There you go.
You're growing old, you're still thinking you're growing up. So, all right, you two stay with us. We'll be right back to you. We've got plenty to say about Hillary Clinton tonight. Stay with us. Trump video is not the only political controversy today. There are not one but two Clinton email scandal revelations out today. Fox News correspondent Jennifer Griffin is in Clinton's hometown of Chappaqua, New York. Jennifer?
Well, Britt, on the one hand, the Clinton campaign may be gloating over that Trump audio tape, but they are also very concerned and have had some bad news today in terms of Clinton's own emails. Just a few moments ago, I caught up with President Bill Clinton, who was out on his evening walk here in Chappaqua, and I asked him about the revelations this afternoon that the intelligence community now believes Russia is behind the hack into U.S. political parties' emails. He told me he had known it all along. He did not respond to accusations from Trump that he had said worse things in the past. The State Department, meanwhile, responding to a court order, released a new batch of Hillary Clinton's emails from when she was Secretary of State, including one from Clinton's former campaign strategist, Mark Penn, suggesting she should find a way to push Vice President Joe Biden off the ticket in 2012. Quote, one way for President Barack Obama to win second term is to ask you to be VP. He will realize that after midterms. Separately, emails obtained by the RNC through the Freedom of Information Act appear to show that White House officials were actively coordinating with the State Department at the start of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign in 2015 to control the fallout from Clinton's use of a homebrew server. In one email exchange, Clinton's current communications director, Jennifer Palmieri, who was serving in the White House at the time, reached out to the State Department's public affairs director, Jen Psaki, to request that she shield Secretary of State John Kerry from news media questions about Clinton's server. In one email, Palmieri asked Psaki, quote, think we can get this done so he is not asked about email? To which Psaki replies, quote, agree completely and working to crush on my end. A day later, Psaki adds via email, good to go on killing CBS idea. A senior administration official says the email exchange referred to their desire to prevent Secretary Kerry from doing any Sunday show interviews at a time when the Iran nuclear talks were at a sensitive time. Kerry ended up being interviewed by a CBS reporter on a trip to Cairo. The interview appeared on the CBS Sunday morning show. Kerry was not asked about Clinton's server. A CBS spokesman said that none of the questions were agreed to in advance and that all questions were on the table. But in terms of the WikiLeaks release tonight of 50,000 of John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chair's emails, there are many emails in there that will prove very embarrassing to the Clinton campaign. Britt?
Yeah, some nights you just can't get through all of it, right, Jennifer?
We're wading through them, Britt, but there are a lot of them.
Well, keep us posted, won't you?
Yes.
And tonight it also appears that WikiLeaks has released transcripts of Hillary Clinton's paid speeches. You remember all the fuss about those? BuzzFeed News published lengthy excerpts this afternoon. Here are a few samples from different speeches to Wall Street and other moneyed groups. Quote, here's Hillary Clinton's remarks at a Goldman BlackRock quoting here, quote, we had a solid middle-class upbringing, so I lived that. And now, obviously, I'm kind of far removed because the life I've lived and, you know, the economic fortunes that my husband and I now enjoy. But I haven't forgotten. Here's Clinton's speech for National Multi-Housing Council, quote, but if everybody's watching you know, all the backroom discussions and the deals, you know, then people get a little nervous, to say the least. So you need both a public and a private position. And here are Hillary Clinton's comments to Banco Itaú, a former Brazilian bank, quote, my dream is a hemispheric common market with open trade and open borders. Sometime in the future with energy that is as green and sustainable as we can get it, powering growth and opportunity for every person in the hemisphere. And here is Clinton's speech to Goldman Sachs Builders and Innovators Summit, quote, But you know, part of the problem with the political situation, too, is that there is such a bias against people who have led successful and or complicated lives. You know, the divestment of assets, the stripping of all kinds of positions, the sale of stocks. It just becomes very onerous and unnecessary. Our nightly political panel is back. Byron York of the Washington Examiner, Heidi Prisbilla of USA Today. Well, the Hillary Clinton we've seen lately is not the Hillary Clinton speaking so sympathetically about executives who have had been involved in divestment and the rest of it, nor is she the person who will tell you that she has public and private positions. What do you think, Heidi?
Well, I think we're going to have to create a classification system for these here, going through all of this. And I'm going to say that there's part of it that is minorly damaging and part of it that's majorly damaging.
Which is which?
The minorly damaging is shocking politicians talk different in private than they do in public, and that she would try to ingratiate herself and show a sympathetic side to these Wall Street bankers who are paying her to speak to them. That's minorly damaging. The majorly damaging part is the part where they talk about trying to fit their policy to her rhetoric and the part about open borders and trade, because this is the exact opposite of the position that she has presented to all of us ever since Bernie Sanders essentially pushed her to the left on this. And he knew, as did a lot of his supporters, and it's the reason why they're still skeptical of her today, that in her heart she's a free trader. It's the same thing with
and an open borders person.
Same thing with calling the TPP the gold standard. And when you look at the fact that Donald Trump has propelled to where he is in this race based on this trade argument and based on the immigration argument, that's hugely important and a problem for her. And just like he's going to have to answer in the debate for his hot mic, this is going to be something that she's going to be dancing around on in the debate as well.
I disagree a little bit on the public and private, because I think that will come back over and over and over again, simply because any other candidate could say, well, Secretary Clinton, is that just your public position, or do you really believe that? I mean, you can use that for anything that she says, but the truly radioactive one is the open borders, when she says, my dream is a hemispheric common market with open trade and open borders. Now, this is what Donald Trump, it's what Mike Pence have been saying over and over and over about Hillary Clinton. She wants open borders, and Democrats always deny that. Absolutely, look, we're calling for tough security on the borders. I mean, they're going to throw this at her every single day.
So I guess we have to balance out. There's bad news, it seems to me, today for both candidates, and revelations. Of course, Jennifer Griffin is still, along with others, I'm sure, trying to plow through the emails that get released. Why is it always on a Friday afternoon, I wonder? I just wonder about that. So, tote up the damage, sort of take an early crack at toting up the damage from each of these to what we learned about Hillary today and what we learned about Trump.
I think they both actually fit into pre-established themes about them, because obviously the whole Alicia Machado stuff from the first debate, and now this new surreptitious audio from earlier. I think this is something that Hillary Clinton will just continue to fit in to this pattern. And as far as Hillary Clinton is concerned, this idea that she's a different person when she talks to fat cats from Goldman Sachs and other millionaires in New York, I think that's a theme that's already been established. So I think if you believe one, this just makes it more serious.
How do you final thoughts?
Well, depends on how each of them handles it, first of all. But on surface, I think this is going to depress her effort to try and court some of these Bernie Sanders voters who've been skeptical of her all along. It may hurt their efforts with turnout. And for Donald Trump, I think those suburban swing women they're going to be locked in.
So who's more hurt today by the revelations? I mean, this is kind of an unfair question, I realize, but take a crack at it.
Well, given where the polls are today, if we consider it, even if we just considered it a draw,
right,
he'd be more hurt because he's got to do more to turn the numbers around.
He needs to gain ground. She needs to hold ground.
Right.
Got it. Well, thanks to both of you. Appreciate it. And some more brand new poll numbers are next. We'll take a look at one of the most important parts of the electorate, independence. And Hurricane Matthew has weakened slightly, but millions of Americans are still in its path, and we will keep you updated throughout the show. So let's dive deeper into those new Fox News polls. A significant shift in poll numbers among independents. The Fox poll finds 39% of independent voters, likely voters, pick Trump. Clinton is 4 points behind with 35. Gary Johnson hits double digits with 11%. But compare that to last month's Fox poll, where Trump led Clinton by 12 points among independents. For more on the polling and what it may tell us, I'm joined by Tom Bevan, founder and publisher of Real Clear Politics. Hi, Tom. What leaps out at you in all these numbers?
Well, the independent number is certainly an important one. This poll is sort of a good news, bad news thing for Hillary Clinton. That is the good news. She managed to close the gap with independents from 12 points down to about 4 points. But she's also got some warning signs in this poll. One of them is this enthusiasm gap that exists out there. We found that the Fox poll found that Trump supporters are about 7% more enthusiastic about turning out for him. And when you ask people who more strongly supports their candidate, Clinton still trails Trump by 13%. So that is a problem for her. It's been a problem for her, and it remains one today.
Tom, this poll, actually, our poll, actually was better for Donald Trump than some of the other recent polls have been. The lead was 4-2, I think, in a two-way and a four-way race. After the week he had with the rocky debate performance on his part, followed by the troubles he got into talking about former Miss Universe and the rest of it, he seemed to be doing better than I imagined he might. He's even she's up, but he's up a little bit too, and the gap in our poll is actually a little less than it was the last time. What do you think is responsible for that principally? Could it have been a Pence effect from that debate, do you think?
Well, definitely the people who saw the debate said that Pence won by, I think, 20 points. I'm not sure how much that affected the overall numbers. The one thing that jumped out at me, Britt, is that the dissatisfaction on the economy and whether government is functioning is rising, is up. It was 7 points back in January of 2015, I think. Now it's a 15-point gap between those who think the economy is doing well and those who think it isn't. And that's the highest it's been since 2011. So I think that is also contributing because the Fox poll also found that among those attributes, policy attributes, Trump is leading in the economy by about 5 points. It's one of 3 or 4 that he was leading Hillary Clinton on.
And it looked like he did a little bit better on questions of terrorism and the ability to defeat ISIS, which I imagine is persistently on people's minds. The economy, of course, is number one. Your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so he leads on ISIS and the economy, which are the two biggest issues on the minds of the public. But that is counteracted by the fact that he continues to trail Clinton by double digits, 20, 30 points on issues of temperament, judgment, and experience. And so it's not at all clear. That's obviously Hillary Clinton's biggest asset in this campaign, Trump's biggest vulnerability. He hasn't moved the needle on that at all so far. He's going to have another chance to do it on Sunday night.
Tom, you heard the first part of this broadcast in which we talked about the revelation about Mr. Trump and his crude remarks 11 years ago, and about Hillary Clinton and her speeches and the things that she said that contradict things she says now. What do you think about those two sets of revelations?
I mean, this campaign, the mud just keeps flowing. I mean, what's interesting is, this all happens Friday afternoon. The public isn't even going to be really able to digest it all before the debate happens on Sunday night. And so I think it is a case of whoever manages to do a better job of exploiting the problems of the other candidate, each of these stories, and what comes out of that debate on Monday is going to have the better of it, whichever story has the longer legs. But it's just more of the same, reinforces all the negatives that both these candidates have been struggling with.
Tom, I guess we're going to look at those candidates on Sunday night, and they'll both be trying to exploit, and they'll both be trying to explain. Tom, thanks very much. Right now, let's read some other news from the world of politics. The U.S. government has officially accused Russia of an attempt to interfere with the 2016 elections, and that includes the hacking of the Democratic National Committee. U.S. intelligence officials say they are confident the Russian government directed the attacks. A spokesman for the Kremlin, however, says the accusations are nonsense. A witness in that Bridgegate trial has walked back her comments, claiming Governor Chris Christie, quote, flat out lied. A text message from Christina Renna said Christie, quote, flat out lied when he denied his senior staff and campaign manager were involved in the deliberately created traffic jams. Under oath, Renna said she made those comments based on what her former boss and Christie's former Deputy Chief of Staff, Bridget Kelly, told her. Kelly is one of 2 former aides currently on trial. And Donald Trump has suggested that illegal immigrants will be sent to the U.S. to vote in the 2016 election. We take a look at that and voter fraud in general coming up. And Hurricane Matthew has left a trail of destruction in its path. And right now the hurricane is headed up the Florida coast toward Georgia and South Carolina. An update on that and the forecast coming next. Election Day is 31 days away, but voters in some states have already cast their ballots. Early voting, as we've reported, has already begun in 12 states, and in the next 2 weeks, many more will start the voting process. Fox News national correspondent Ed Henry took a look at the impact of early voting.
Before heading home to Chicago for some R&R plus a little weekend fundraising for Hillary Clinton, President Obama shared a little secret.
I'll probably do early vote. I'll fill out my form. Don't worry, I'll be voting, man.
An early vote in safely Democratic Illinois will not matter much to Clinton, but her aides believe at least 40% of the total votes cast in this election will come in before November 8th. And the Clinton camp hopes with 36 states and the District of Columbia having some form of early voting, they can deliver an early knockout of Republican Donald Trump. Clinton campaign manager Robbie Mook asserting that especially with help from minority voters, they could lock down 3 battlegrounds ahead of Election Day. Florida, where early voting starts October 24th, Nevada, with early voting beginning October 22nd, and North Carolina, which kicks off on October 20th. The intensity of this race and the emphasis on early voting can best be seen in Florida, where 2.72 million voters have asked for vote-by-mail ballots, a massive jump from the 1.86 million requested at this time 4 years ago. Mook noted Clinton will particularly benefit in the Sunshine State from a 77% increase in vote-by-mail ballots among Hispanics and 79% among Asian Americans. Though Republicans counter that overall in Florida they have historically had a strong advantage in early voting. And Trump is now pressing this point in other key states like Colorado, which starts early voting on October 24th.
And you have to get out and vote.
And if all else fails in Florida, Clinton aides may fall back on a lawsuit over, of all things, Hurricane Matthew. Clinton aides have used the hurricane to press state officials to extend next Tuesday's deadline to register to vote, either early or on Election Day. Though Republican Governor Rick Scott has rejected that request, declaring Floridians had ample time before the storm to register. A good example of Clinton's edge comes in Iowa. Early voting started there last week, and so far 3 times as many Democrats have turned in ballots. In a tight national race, the Hawkeye State's 6 electoral votes are in heavy demand. Britt?
Thank you, Ed. In 2012, more than 1/3 of voters cast their ballots before Election Day. That is more than double the rate of the 2000 election. One fear that reemerges every election cycle is voter fraud, and that includes the possibility of votes from illegal immigrants. Donald Trump spoke about that today at an immigration roundtable with Art Del Cueto, Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council.
Spoken to several agents in my sector that are in charge of a lot of this processing of these individuals that we apprehended. A lot of them do have criminal records, and the problem that we're seeing and that's being reflected to us as the voice is that some of these individuals that we're apprehending with criminal records, they're not, I mean, they're checking the records, they're noticing that they have criminal records, but they're setting them aside because at this point they're saying immigration is so tied up with trying to get the people that are in the waiting list, hurry up and get them their immigration status corrected, make them citizens, so they can go ahead and vote before the election. And for us to
big statement, fellas.
I mean, to do that,
I'm sure you're not going to write it. To me, that's a message.
That's huge.
You're letting people pour into the country so they can go and vote.
We want to hurry up and fast track them so they can go ahead and be able to vote for these elections.
And these are the professionals. These are the people that are on the board. You hear a thing like that, it's a disgrace.
John Fund, National Affairs Correspondent for National Review, joins me now from New York. John, you've had your eye on this issue for a long time. What are you seeing?
We have an honor system in all the 50 states. If you want to register to vote and vote, the only thing that prevents you from voting if you're a non-citizen is checking a box saying you're a citizen. We don't have any kind of verification on that. We have evidence all over the country the last few weeks, whether it's Virginia, Pennsylvania, Illinois, that non-citizens are on the registration rolls and they can easily vote. This story that came out today reminds me that 20 years ago this month, the Clinton campaign, the Bill Clinton campaign in 1996, had a program called Citizenship USA. They were rushing 1 million people through to premature citizenship. 200,000 didn't have proper background checks. Several thousand criminal aliens were made citizens back then. And an Inspector General's report from the Justice Department roundly condemned that program for its sloppiness and its lack of adherence to established procedures.
John, the argument is often made by people who don't think we need, voter ID laws and strict standards for people to meet to be able to vote, that for all the evidence that we have through anecdotes about people voting fraudulently or improperly, that it doesn't add up to enough to have made a difference in any election. What do you say to that?
Well, in 2008, Al Franken finally won the Minnesota Senate race by 315 votes. We now know there were 1,200 felons who voted illegally in that election. There were also a lot of non-citizens who voted in that election, enough to make up the difference. Al Franken became the 60th vote for the Democrats in the Senate. That enabled them to break the filibuster in Obamacare. We have Obamacare today in part because Al Franken was elected or declared the elected senator and cast the deciding vote on Obamacare.
Yeah, and I guess people must have forgotten about Florida 2000, in which the tiniest number of votes made all the difference. And
could happen again this year.
Yeah, I also have to ask you about the notion that the notion that fraud won't matter. It seems to me is contradicted by the fact also that you have a lot of down ballot races in which the volume of votes is much smaller than it is in a Senate race and certainly in a presidential race, where cheating could much more easily make a difference.
We see that over and over again. The races that really decide how people live on a day-to-day basis, the sheriff race, the mayor's race, the city council race, the school board race, often are decided by a handful of votes. You put your thumb on the scale of democracy and have a few fraudulent votes or votes that are counted improperly, it can change who sits in those positions.
John, I posted a tweet the other day in which I said that anybody who says that, or if somebody tries to tell you that there's not enough voter fraud in American elections to make a difference, should ask that person to volunteer to have his or her vote canceled by a fake vote. I didn't get a lot of volunteers, although I got a couple, but I think that's also an issue. Every vote's supposed to count, right? Isn't that one of the Democratic Party's mantras of not too long ago?
We have two civil rights. One is a right that we fought for in the 60s to make sure everyone can vote without intimidation, without poll taxes and other barriers. We need to keep that fight going. There's another civil right. Everyone in your audience has the right to have their ballot cast and not have it canceled out by someone who's a felon, someone who doesn't exist, someone who's dead, someone who is a non-citizen. That is also a civil right. We need to protect both civil rights.
John, thanks very much. Always good to see you. Watch out, fraternities and sororities. One public California university says you are appropriating Greek culture. Our campus craziness segment is next. And more than 1 million people still in the dark without power from Hurricane Matthew. We'll stay in touch with it. Time now to take a look at the craziness at our nation's schools and universities. Conservative Milwaukee Sheriff David Clark says an invitation to speak at the University of New Haven in Connecticut was rescinded due to his views on Black Lives Matter. The university tried to cover up the cancellation when they blamed it on their inability to meet Sheriff Clark's demands, which they say included first-class airfare and a presidential hotel suite. But Sheriff Clark denied ever making those demands, and the school later said the invite was indeed rescinded because, quote, it was determined his appearance could potentially become politically polarizing. In response, Sheriff Clark wrote on his blog, quote, I understand why you don't want people to know that a predominantly white college won't let a black man speak on campus because of your incredible support for minorities, end quote. Students as young as 6 years old at Manhattan's prestigious Bank Street School have the opportunity to self-segregate into white and non-white safe spaces. Students who self-identify as white meet together to discuss their experiences as white people, while non-white students meet to discuss their experiences separately. The initiative is part of the school's official, quote, racial and justice advocacy program. By the 4th grade, students at the school begin to discuss the history of race and racism. The school told Fox News that it has always, quote, strived to promote a diverse community. The University of California, Merced has advised students not to use the term Greek life because it's a form of cultural appropriation. Greek life, of course, is a ubiquitous term used by students to describe fraternities and sororities, which, as you know, are often named by Greek letters. The College Fix, which first broke this story, also reports that UC Merced has replaced its traditional Greek Week with the new, more politically correct Fraternity and Sorority Life Week. The university told Fox News the changes make the terms more contemporary and inclusive. And a new study of faculty voter registration at America's top universities found that Democratic professors outnumber Republicans by nearly 12-1. The study, published in the journal Econ Watch, also shows that our universities have become much more Democratic since 2004. In some university departments, the ratio is especially stark. Journalism departments have 20 Democrats for each Republican professor. In history departments, there are more than 33 Democrats for every one Republican. Of the 40 schools covered by the study, Brown University was the most liberal, with 60 Democrats for every one Republican. Pepperdine University in California was the most conservative, with a roughly even ratio. If you have a campus craziness story, let us know. Email us and tell us about it, campuscraziness@foxnews.com. We would appreciate hearing from you. And Hurricane Matthew is still a dangerous threat to much of the East Coast. Our meteorologists and reporters bring you an update next. This is a Fox News alert. Hurricane Matthew moving its way up the Florida coast, and with it heavy rain, wind, and the threat of devastating storm surge. Fox News chief meteorologist Rick Reichman is tracking the hurricane. Hello, Rick.
Hi there. Yeah, we're over 24 hours into this, and we have about another 36 or so to go. Unbelievable, such territory under these hurricane conditions. Hurricane warnings still in effect from just to the north of Daytona Beach, although we are improving here across Florida. Now we're going to see conditions get worse, and those hurricane warnings extend up into South and North Carolina now. And the storm is moving off towards the north at this point, and if it continues to move towards the north before making a little bit of a northeastward jog, we would see some sort of a landfall of this, possibly somewhere around that Georgia in towards South Carolina, maybe around the Charleston area. This is a future radar look. Here's midnight tonight. We have a lot of wind and water still pulling into Savannah in the storm surge, but the worst of it heading towards the Charleston area, and then kind of whatever is left of the center of this flirting somewhere with the coast by the morning tomorrow morning. But notice this incredibly heavy rain all across parts of South Carolina and moving into North Carolina by the morning. By tomorrow afternoon, South Carolina, you're mostly done, and you're settled here across North Carolina and into Virginia, the eastern side of Virginia. And then finally, there you go, Sunday, Britt, 11 a.m. around noon, all of this moisture is finally gone.
Rick, as bad as this has been and as horrible as the maps always look, it does strike me that this didn't quite hit the coast of Florida as badly as it might have. Am I right about that?
You are right in the sense that the strongest of the winds were right at the very, very center of that storm. And the storm tracked about 20 to 30 miles offshore, almost all the way up the Florida coastline. So we were spared the worst of that wind, which certainly relieved us from a lot of the damage from it, and the storm surge that we still have and the rain. But you are right that we got on the good side of that storm. Let's hope the same thing happens up across the Carolinas.
Rick, thank you. You're the best at what you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's go to Fox News correspondent Rob Schmidt, who is in Savannah, Georgia, where Hurricane Matthew is on the way. Hi, Rob. What are you seeing?
Well, Robert, seeing a lot of wind and a lot of rain right now. We're looking just the length of that story. The height of that story is still about 100 miles away. It is, though, a fairly intense storm coming in. It's already killed at least 4 people in Florida. We're standing here on River Avenue and right on the Savannah River, right across the river of South Carolina. So we're right at the border there of Georgia and South Carolina. River Avenue actually turning into a bit of a river itself, as you can see here. Savannah under a mandatory evacuation right now. A curfew in place here in Savannah as well. Sundown to sun up, you can't be out on the streets, and with good reason. This storm, as Rick just kind of got into, really hasn't touched shore yet. The eye of that storm, the worst of that storm, hasn't touched shore yet. That could happen here in a place like Savannah or in a place like Charleston. That's the way the track's looking at this point. So this storm could get a lot worse for the United States as a whole as the night goes on, and it's looking like it's going to hit here sometime in the middle of the night.
We can tell you that in Savannah, there's a lot at risk in this city. I do want to show you a little bit of video right now of some of the things that we saw today. If you've never been to the city of Savannah, it is absolutely beautiful, and there is so much history here, so many historic buildings that are protected by the federal government. It's a city that was built almost 300 years ago, so there is a lot at risk that needs to be protected. We're hoping that Matthew does stay fairly tame. And the other thing that's a bit of a problem here in Georgia is this is a state that has had a lot of close calls with hurricanes, but really hasn't been hit by a good one since about 1979, and that was David, which initially was a Cat 5, and then went right up the coast, kind of the same way this one has, and was about a Cat 1 when it hit here, but did kill a number of people in the United States.
Yeah, Rob, thank you. As of midday today, my recollection is that there was only one person killed. Has that number been updated to your knowledge, Rob?
Yeah, Brett, if you're asking me if that number has gone up to about at least 4 now in the state of Florida. It's the current updated total at this point. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Thanks very much. Even more death and destruction could occur, of course, as this storm makes landfall, if it does, on that part of the coast there, which juts out, and we'll be waiting to see if that happens. Haiti, of course. The death toll now is something like 142 people reportedly killed. Tens of thousands of people, as that picture there suggests, have been left homeless. Most of those killed were in towns and fishing villages around the southwestern coast, many of them killed by falling trees, flying debris, and floods. Stay with Fox News throughout the night for live updates on Hurricane Matthew. And coming up, once again, some Twitter users are not too happy about my clothes, but according to others, I'm too old for it to matter. More mean tweets are next. Let's hear some of the feedback we're getting from you, the viewers, some of whom offered encouragement, well, sort of. Chuck Marunder tweeted, "Britt, don't listen to those who whine about you sounding tired and worn out. Who wouldn't be after 100 years in the news business?" And Ron Zajichek said, "I didn't know you were 73, Britt. I thought you were in the 3-digit category." Melinda Earl tweeted, "Don't let the haters get you down. You're awesome, like a comfy old blanket that you've had forever but wouldn't part with." And the reaction to my wardrobe continues. Tommy Maris tweeted, quote, "Please visit O'Reilly's tailor. He always looks sharp. You look like you threw on whatever you could find in your dad's closet." But Barbara Latham emailed, "Do people actually have nothing else to comment on but your clothing? Give me a break. They've got to get a life." Folks, please keep the feedback coming. Tweet me using @BrittHume or send us an email. And finally tonight, 20 years ago today, Fox News Channel launched. Not long after, I left ABC News and joined my wife Kim at this bureau where we're broadcasting from tonight. She was Fox's first Washington bureau chief, and I was the first managing editor. Together we set up this bureau with many men and women who are still here today. In 1998, amid the Lewinsky scandal, a new political show was born. Watch. Welcome to Washington. I'm Britt Hume, and I'll be here at this time each night with a special report on the events that have engulfed the Clinton presidency. We'll bring you up to date each day and try to analyze what's happened. 10 years later, I handed over the reins to my friend and colleague Bret Baier. As I have vacation coming, this will be my last night in the anchor chair. Bret will be here after the holidays, and so, in a new year, in a new role, will I. One thing I didn't realize when I signed off to become an analyst that night was that this would happen a full 8 years later. I'm Britt Hume in Washington, and I'll be here through Election Day with a nightly hour on this extraordinary political season. To all my colleagues, current and former, happy anniversary to us all. We leave you with a quote of the day tonight from the journalist and humorist P.J. O'Rourke, who said, "The Democrats are the party of government activism, the party that says government can make you richer. We'll get the rest of it later." Good night.